In the winter of 1851, two men walked into the Medical College of Virginia asking for help. They were rich, young, and perfectly healthy, or so it seemed. 6 months later, both were dead. One died screaming, clawing at his own skin. The other died silent, still, staring into nothing. No one ever figured out why. Because someone made sure the truth stayed hidden. But some stories don't stay buried forever. This is the true nightmare of the Henderson twins. And the secrets that still haunt the dark corners of American medical history. Begin Part 1. The Henderson brothers, Thomas and Timothy, were born in 1825 on a tobacco plantation just outside Richmond, Virginia. They were identical twins, tall, pale, with cold gray eyes that made people uncomfortable. Even as children, they were strange. Thomas was violent, Timothy was silent, but both were dangerous. Their father, Jeremiah Henderson, was one of the richest plantation owners in Virginia. He didn't just grow tobacco. He sold something far more horrifying. He sold human bodies. When enslaved people died, or sometimes were made to disappear, Jeremiah sold their remains to medical schools. Doctors paid good money for cadavers to dissect and study. And if they needed living subjects to test new treatments. Well, Jeremiah had those too. By age 12, the twins were helping with the family business. By age 15, they were preparing bodies themselves. By 20, they didn't flinch at the sight of blood, or at the sound of screaming. But something changed in 1851. That February morning was cold, the ground covered in frost. Timothy showed up at the front door of their mansion, completely naked. His skin was purple from the cold. His hands were covered in blood. In one hand, he held a shovel with bits of hair and bone stuck to it. His face was scratched like he'd crawled through brambles. And his eyes, they stared straight ahead, as if he wasn't really there. When his father asked what happened, Timothy said only one thing. Over and over. The specimens are walking. Thomas, frightened for the first time in his life, followed the trail of blood. It led to the tobacco drying barn. Inside, he found 3 dead bodies: Caesar, Benjamin, and Moses, enslaved men who had worked on the plantation. They were posed at a long wooden table as if having a meeting. Their eyes were forced open with tiny twigs. Their skulls had been smashed in, one by one. The scene looked more like a ritual than a crime. Timothy had no memory of it. When confronted, he kept saying he'd slept through the night. His tone was flat, no fear, no emotion, just emptiness. Thomas had always protected his brother. But now, even he felt something was deeply wrong. Their father, Jeremiah, didn't call the police. He couldn't risk the truth getting out. So he buried the bodies in a swamp, burned the bloody clothes, and cleaned the barn. He told neighbors the 3 men had run away. And just like that, the murders were hidden. But something had changed in Timothy. He started seeing things. He talked to people who weren't there. He couldn't sleep. He said the dead were following him. And he washed his hands so much, they bled. Thomas, too, began to suffer. He had nightmares, real, vivid dreams where he killed people. Or watched them die, or stood in the corner, taking notes. He started carrying a knife. Said he needed it to protect himself from the walking specimens. By spring, both brothers were falling apart. Thomas became violent. He attacked a preacher just for saying all souls were equal. It took 4 men to pull him off. Timothy became ghost-like. He stopped talking. He wandered the fields at night. Servants found him standing for hours in the old slave quarters. Sometimes, he was in the barn, touching the air like he saw something no one else could. No one knew what to do. Some whispered the twins were cursed. Others said they were being haunted by the people they had hurt. Their father brought in doctors from all over Virginia. None could explain what was happening. But there was one man who had an idea. A doctor who believed in secret experiments. A man with a reputation so dark, other cities had pushed him away. His name was Dr. Cornelius Hartwell, and he was about to offer help. For a price. Outro. Spoken slowly with tension building. Next time, we'll take you inside the Medical College of Virginia, where the Henderson twins were treated by a man who believed the mind could be fixed, even if it meant breaking the soul. Subscribe so you don't miss part 2 of the Henderson twins. And tell us in the comments, which state are you watching from? And do you think the specimens were real? Or just the first signs of madness? Let me know if you'd like the thumbnail text, title, description, and hashtags for this episode. The Henderson Twins, Part 2, The Doctor. Dr. Cornelius Hartwell first heard about the Henderson twins during a chance meeting at the Richmond Medical Society. When Jeremiah Henderson explained the strange changes in his sons, Thomas becoming violent and Timothy turning quiet and distant, Hartwell's face lit up with interest. But it wasn't the kind of concern you'd expect from a doctor. It was something colder, deeper, like a scientist who just found the perfect experiment. Hartwell asked detailed questions. When did the changes start? What exactly did each twin do? Did their symptoms match? The more he heard, the more excited he became. Identical twins, acting like complete opposites. To Hartwell, this was no tragedy. It was an opportunity. Because they were identical, any difference in behavior couldn't be blamed on their bodies, it had to come from the mind. And that was exactly what Hartwell wanted to study. A few weeks later, in March 1851, Hartwell visited the Henderson plantation. The ride from Richmond took nearly 3 hours. As his carriage rolled up the long dirt path, he admired the plantation. The grand house, the perfect rows of tobacco, the cabins where enslaved workers lived, it all looked like a painting. But he wasn't here for the beauty. He was here for the twins. When Hartwell examined Thomas and Timothy, he was amazed. He spent 6 hours with them, taking notes, asking questions, checking their reflexes, and watching closely. He saw something Jeremiah had missed. Both boys had signs of poisoning. Their eyes stayed wide open, even in bright light, a sign of opium use. Their hands shook slightly when no one was watching. They both complained of a strange metallic taste and sometimes got sick for no reason. When Hartwell asked about their food and medicine, he learned they both drank from the same well, ate the same meals, and had been taking the same tonic their father gave them every day. Hartwell realized something chilling. Someone had been slowly poisoning the twins, on purpose or by accident, with drugs that change how the mind works. Months of these substances had made their brains soft, easy to shape. They were like clay in his hands. Hartwell saw his chance. He told Jeremiah that the Medical College of Virginia could help. He described a treatment plan full of long words and hopeful promises. The twins would stay in private rooms. They'd be watched day and night by trained staff. With the right care, Hartwell said, the boys would be healed, and maybe even better than before. He said the twins could help the world by being part of a special study. Their strange condition, he claimed, was rare and valuable to science. Jeremiah, desperate to help his sons and proud that his family might be part of something important, agreed. He didn't know Hartwell was lying. Hartwell didn't want to cure the twins. He wanted to break them. To turn them into two living examples of what the human mind could become under extreme conditions. Thomas would be turned into a predator, heartless, violent, and dangerous. Timothy would become the opposite, quiet, obedient, and completely under control. On May 15, 1851, the twins arrived at the medical college. It was a huge stone building with columns and strange shapes that looked like something out of ancient Egypt. Their rooms were on the third floor. Thomas was placed in room 312, facing the sunrise. Timothy went to room 314, facing the sunset. Hartwell's office was in room 313, right between them. He told Jeremiah that the boys needed to be kept apart during treatment. They couldn't speak to each other or see each other. Even their food and schedules had to be different. Jeremiah agreed and went home, thinking his sons were in safe hands. He was wrong. Within 2 weeks, the changes were shocking. Thomas grew worse, fast. He attacked doctors and nurses so often they tied him to the bed. Guards had to watch him at all times. His muscles grew stronger. His voice became fast, loud, and full of violent thoughts. He talked calmly about torture, murder, and how to find people's weaknesses. He could look at someone and tell what scared them most, or how to hurt them. And he was usually right. Timothy, on the other hand, became a shell. He followed any order, no matter how strange or cruel. Crawl like a dog. Done. Stand still for hours. No problem. He stopped speaking unless spoken to. When he did talk, it made no sense. Stories about people and places that weren't real. He stared blankly, like nobody was home behind his eyes. One nurse, Margaret Wickham, started keeping her own secret notes. What she saw terrified her. Thomas described torture like it was a hobby. Timothy would sit perfectly still for hours. Once, a hot lamp burned him by accident. He didn't even flinch. Meanwhile, Hartwell continued his work. Every day, he gave the twins more drugs, stronger and more dangerous than anything used in real medicine. Thomas received mercury, opium, and strange chemicals from Europe. Hartwell wanted to destroy the part of Thomas's brain that felt empathy or guilt. Timothy was given high doses of morphine and chemicals that erased memory and made him totally obedient. Hartwell wanted him to become a person who couldn't think for himself at all. Other doctors started to notice. One of them, Edmund Carver, saw Hartwell injecting the twins with things that didn't look like medicine. He asked to see Hartwell's research notes. Hartwell refused. Carver learned that Hartwell was writing letters to doctors in Germany and Austria, men known for doing cruel and illegal experiments. Hartwell was planning to publish his findings in their journals. But before Carver could take action, something terrible happened. On the night of October 12th, Timothy disappeared. The next morning, his room was empty. The door was unlocked. His bed was used, but nothing else was touched. There were no signs of a break-in. But anyone who knew Timothy's condition understood something was wrong. He couldn't dress himself. He couldn't walk out on his own. He couldn't even breathe deeply without being told. So how did he vanish? And more importantly, who helped him? Would you like to continue with part 3, or revise anything here before we move forward? The Henderson Twins, Part 3, The Girl in the Mirror. The storm grew worse that night. The wind howled like a hungry animal, and the trees outside the Belle Hollow house banged against the windows. Mrs. Henderson sat in her chair by the fireplace, clutching a rosary, whispering prayers. But they offered little comfort. Upstairs, Mary was in her room, staring at the mirror. She had not told anyone, but for the last few days, she had seen strange things in that mirror. It started with shadows. Then came the fog. Now she saw something else. Someone else. Tonight, that someone was clear. It was her sister, Eliza. But not how she remembered her. Eliza stood in the mirror in the same white dress she had worn the night she disappeared. Her face looked pale, and her eyes were wide and unblinking. Her lips did not move, but Mary heard her voice inside her head. "Come to me." Mary stepped back, terrified. "No, you're not real." But Eliza remained, staring through the glass. The mirror fogged over, and then new words appeared, written in the mist. Under the floor, Mary ran out of the room, her heart pounding. She found Mr. Henderson downstairs, sitting at the table with a glass of bourbon. He looked tired, older than ever. "Papa, I saw her again." He sighed and placed the glass down. "Mary, you must stop this. Eliza is gone. That's the truth. But she's trying to tell me something." Mr. Henderson stood up and raised his voice. "There are no ghosts. What you're seeing is grief. Nothing more." Mary turned and ran up the stairs, tears falling down her face. She wasn't crazy. She knew what she saw. And she was going to find the truth, even if no one believed her. That night, Mary couldn't sleep. The wind outside had calmed, but something inside her was still loud. Her sister's voice echoed in her mind. Under the floor, she got out of bed quietly and picked up a candle. She crept through the hallway, careful not to wake anyone. The floor creaked under her bare feet. She entered the old study at the end of the hall. It was the room Eliza loved to read in. The family hadn't used it in years. Dust covered everything. Mary set the candle on the desk and looked around. The wooden floor creaked again. She knelt down and ran her hands across the boards. Tap, tap. One of the boards sounded hollow. She pulled at it with her fingers. It was loose. With effort, she lifted the board, and under it, wrapped in an old cloth, was a small wooden box. She opened it. Inside were papers, letters, drawings, and a journal. It was Eliza's. Mary opened the journal and began to read. March 7, 1850. Greater than today. I saw a girl in the mirror. She looked just like me, but it wasn't me. I smiled. She didn't. She whispered my name even though her lips didn't move. March 9, 1850. Greater than. The girl says she's trapped. She says the house holds secrets. She showed me a door I've never seen before. I want to find it. March 12, 1850. Greater than. I followed the girl last night. She took me into the cellar. There was something in the walls. I think someone is hiding something terrible. Mary flipped through the pages, her hands shaking. Eliza had been seeing the same girl in the mirror. She had found something in the cellar. Mary closed the book, heart racing. She knew what she had to do. The next day, Mary waited until everyone was busy. Then she slipped into the cellar, just like her sister had written. The air down there was cold and damp. Dust floated in the air, and old cobwebs clung to the ceiling. It smelled of mold and old secrets. Mary held her candle close and walked slowly. She reached the far wall. It was made of stone. One side looked newer, like it had been rebuilt. She knocked. Hollow. She pressed her hand against it. The stones moved. It was a hidden door. Mary pulled it open. Behind it was a small room. The floor was dirt, and in the corner was something wrapped in cloth. She walked closer. Her breath caught. It was a dress. A white dress, just like Eliza's. It was dirty, torn, and stained red. Mary fell to her knees. This was it. The truth was here. She heard a sound behind her. Footsteps. She turned, but no one was there. Then a whisper came from the shadows. You shouldn't have come here. Mary ran, dropping the candle. The light went out, and she was swallowed by darkness. She didn't stop until she was back in the hallway, her chest heaving. Someone had hidden the truth. And someone didn't want it found. To be continued. Would you like part 4 now? The Henderson Twins. Part 4. The Hidden Diary. The air was thick with fear. Catherine stood frozen outside the locked nursery door. The moment she touched the doorknob, she had heard whispers, soft and strange. The sound had come from inside the room where the twins once slept. She looked around. The hallway was empty. Rain tapped gently against the windows. The shadows of the night crept across the wooden floor. With a shaky breath, Catherine pulled out the key her mother had left behind. It was small, old, and made of iron. She turned it slowly in the lock. Click. The door creaked open. The nursery hadn't been touched in years. Dust covered the rocking horse. The dolls sat lifeless in their chairs. The twin beds were still made, with lace pillows and tiny quilts folded neatly. Catherine stepped inside. A cold wind passed through the room, though the windows were shut. Suddenly, the rocking chair in the corner began to move. It rocked forward, then back, forward again. Her heart pounded. She took a step closer. Who's there? She whispered. No answer. She noticed something on the floor, a torn ribbon. Blue. The same color the twins had worn in their hair. She bent down and picked it up. Then she saw it. Something poking out from under one of the beds. A corner of an old book. She pulled it out slowly. It was a leather-bound diary. The initials, M.H., were carved into the front. Madeline Henderson, one of the twins. Catherine sat on the edge of the bed and opened the book. The pages were yellow with age. The handwriting was small and neat. April 2nd, 1850. Mama says we must be careful. People in town whisper when they see us. They say twins are a bad sign. We are not bad. We are just alike. That's all. April 7th, 1850. Father made us promise not to tell anyone about the shadow. He says it only visits special children. I don't like it. It watches us from the woods. April 12, 1850. Rose woke up screaming again. She says the shadow touched her. Mama says it's just dreams. But I saw it too. It's real. Catherine's hands trembled as she turned each page. The entries grew darker. The twins had seen something. A presence. A spirit. Something that watched them. May 1st, 1850. The shadow is stronger now. It follows us into the house. We hear it breathing when we sleep. May 4th, 1850. Mama is afraid too. She tried to burn the dolls. She said they had been cursed. Father stopped her. May 9th, 1850. We must not go near the well. Catherine stopped. Her eyes widened. The well. There was an old stone well behind the house, near the edge of the woods. It had been sealed for years. Her father always told her never to go near it. Her fingers flipped through the last few pages. May 10th, 1850. Mama cried all night. The shadow said it wants one of us. But we are the same. It can't choose. May 11th, 1850. Rose says she will run away. She says if she leaves, the shadow won't find us. But I don't want her to go. I'm scared. May 12th, 1850. I can't find Rose. The diary ended there. Catherine closed the book slowly. Her eyes were full of tears. Her breath shook. What happened to you, Rose? She whispered. Just then, the rocking chair stopped. The air in the room grew colder. She looked up. In the corner of the room, near the bed, stood a shadowy figure. Small, childlike, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Catherine dropped the book and stumbled back. The figure didn't move. She turned and ran from the room, slamming the door behind her. Down the stairs, through the hallway, into the kitchen, where the lantern still burned. Her hands shook as she placed the diary on the table. She had to know the truth. Whatever had taken Rose, whatever still haunted the house, it was connected to that well. The next morning, Catherine walked into town to visit Father Charles, the old priest. She told him everything, the diary, the shadow, the whispers. He listened quietly. His face grew pale. That land is cursed, he finally said. Your grandfather made a deal with something he did not understand. The well is not just a well. It's a gate, and the price was always a child. Catherine's heart sank. But why the twins? She asked. Father Charles looked away. Because in old beliefs, twins confuse the spirits. They don't know which soul to take. So they take both. That night, Catherine stood in front of the old well. The stone was cracked. Vines grew over it. The cover was still in place, but she could feel something beneath it. Watching. Waiting. She whispered, Rose, are you in there? The wind blew. A faint voice answered, Catherine, help me. Her blood turned to ice. She wasn't imagining it. Rose was still there, but not alive. To be continued in part 5. The well beneath the roots. Stay tuned for more chilling truth behind the Henderson twins. Would you like me to continue with part 5 now? The Henderson twins. Part 5. The portrait in the attic. The next morning, rain fell lightly over Belle Hollow. The sky was gray, and the air was cold. Mrs. Palmer lit the fireplace while Clara ate her breakfast in silence. She hadn't slept well. Her dreams had been filled with whispers and footsteps. "I'll clean the attic today," Mrs. Palmer said, sipping her tea. "No one's touched it since before you were born." Clara looked up. The attic. Yes. There may be old things up there. Maybe even something from the twins. Clara's heart beat faster. "Can I come with you?" Mrs. Palmer smiled. "If you're not afraid of dust and cobwebs." The attic was dark, filled with old furniture covered in sheets. The wooden floor creaked beneath their feet. A single window let in gray light through layers of grime. Mrs. Palmer opened a large trunk and began pulling out blankets and books. Clara walked slowly to the far corner. Something called her there. Behind a tall mirror, she found an old, dust-covered canvas. It was a painting. She brushed the dust away and gasped. It was a portrait of two little girls, identical twins. They wore white dresses and blue ribbons. Their eyes were cold. Their faces were blank. Their names were written at the bottom. Annabelle and Lillian Henderson, 1847. Clara stepped back. She felt dizzy. Where did this come from? She whispered. Mrs. Palmer turned to look. Her face went pale. "I didn't know this was still here," she said slowly. "This must have been painted just before they disappeared." Clara looked closely. Something was wrong. In the background of the painting, there was a window. And behind the window, a face. A shadowy figure stood watching the twins from inside the house. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The portrait stayed in her mind. Who was the figure in the window? Why did the twins look so lifeless? She got out of bed and quietly tiptoed back to the attic. The house was silent. Her candlelight flickered as she climbed the narrow stairs. When she reached the attic, the painting was where they left it. But now, the eyes of the twins seemed to follow her. She touched the frame, and then she heard it. A whisper. "Clara." She froze. "Come play with us." The candle flickered violently. The air turned icy. Clara dropped the candle. Darkness swallowed the room. She turned and ran, nearly tripping on the stairs. Her breath was loud. Her heart beat like a drum. She slammed the attic door behind her and didn't stop running until she reached her room. In the morning, Clara told Mrs. Palmer what happened. "You must have imagined it," the woman said gently. "Attics play tricks on the mind." Clara shook her head. "They spoke to me. I heard them." Mrs. Palmer looked away. "Maybe the twins are trying to tell you something. Maybe they're not at peace." Clara thought of the cold eyes in the painting. The shadowy face in the window. What if someone hurt them? She asked. Mrs. Palmer didn't answer. Later that day, Clara found an old diary in the library. It belonged to Eleanor Henderson, the twins' mother. The pages were yellow, and the ink was faded. She flipped through the entries until one stopped her. April 3, 1847. "The girls have grown quiet. They do not laugh anymore. They speak to each other in whispers, but not to me. Lillian says the man in the mirror talks to her. She says he visits them at night. Clara's hands shook. She turned the page. April 10, 1847. Annabelle screamed last night. She said she saw Father standing at the foot of her bed. But Father died last year. My poor girls. I fear they are being watched. Clara closed the book. She felt sick. Who was the man in the mirror? What happened to the twins? That night, Clara made a decision. She had to go back to the attic. She had to face whatever haunted Belle Hollow. She climbed the stairs again, this time with a lantern and a prayer. The attic was colder than ever. The painting waited for her in the shadows. I know you're here, she said aloud. Nothing. I saw the diary. I saw the face in the painting. The lantern flickered. The attic creaked. And then, slowly, the painting began to change. Clara watched in horror as the background darkened. The shadowy figure in the window became clearer. It was a man. His face was twisted in anger. His eyes were hollow. Suddenly, two small voices echoed through the attic. Help us. Clara turned, but saw no one. He locked us away. She looked back at the painting. Now the twins were pointing at the floorboards beneath Clara's feet. She dropped to her knees and tapped the boards. One of them sounded hollow. With shaking hands, she pried it open. Inside was a small wooden box. She lifted the lid. Inside were two tiny, silver lockets. One had the name Annabelle. The other said Lillian. Next to them was a folded note. She opened it and read the words. Forgive me. I couldn't stop him. E.H. Clara sat back, tears in her eyes. The truth was buried all these years. The girls were taken, hurt, forgotten. But now they had been found. Behind her, she felt a soft breeze. She turned and saw the faint shapes of the twins standing at the window. They smiled, and then, just like that, they were gone. Only the painting remained, faded and quiet. To be continued. Want Part 6. Just say the word. The Henderson Twins, Part 6. Simple English 1000 words 1850s Louisiana horror series. The sky was dark when Emma returned to the house. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The wind moved through the trees like a whisper from the dead. She walked slowly up the steps, her shoes wet with mud from the swamp. Every sound felt louder than it should. The creak of the steps, the rustle of her dress, her breath. Inside, the house was colder than before. She found her father sitting alone in the parlor. The fire had gone out. He didn't look at her. He just stared into the empty fireplace. They're not in the swamp, Emma said. Her voice was shaking. But something is. Mr. Henderson turned slowly to face her. His eyes were tired and sunken. I know, he whispered. Emma's hands trembled. You knew all along, didn't you? He nodded slowly. There are things in this land, things older than us. I tried to keep them away. But the girls, they were drawn to it. Emma stepped back, confused and afraid. What do you mean, Mr. Henderson didn't answer. He stood up and walked past her, into the hallway. Emma followed. He led her to the attic staircase. Come, he said. It's time you saw the truth. The attic was full of dust and shadows. Old furniture, Broken toys, and boxes of forgotten things filled the space. In the far corner, under a white sheet, was something large. Mr. Henderson pulled the sheet away. It was a painting, huge and strange. It showed the plantation house, but the sky was blood red. The trees around it were twisted, and the ground was covered in bones. In front of the house stood two little girls, identical twins, dressed in white. But their eyes were black. Emma stepped back. That's them. Mr. Henderson looked at the painting with sorrow. That painting has hung in this house since before we owned it. I don't know who painted it or why. But every generation, twin girls are born. And every time, they vanish. Emma felt the air grow heavier. You mean, this has happened before? He nodded. My sisters. My great aunts. All twins. All lost to the swamp. Emma stared at the painting. Then why did you stay here? Why didn't you leave? I thought I could stop it, he said. I kept them inside. I kept them away from the trees. But the whispering always finds them. Suddenly, a sound came from the window. A tapping. Emma turned and saw the twins standing in the yard. They were smiling. They're here, Emma whispered. Mr. Henderson ran down the stairs, shouting for the door to be locked. But it was too late. The front door blew open with a gust of cold wind. The twins stepped inside. Their dresses were still white, but now soaked with swamp water. Their feet left wet prints on the floor. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Papa, they said together, their voices hollow. We're home. Emma stood frozen. Mr. Henderson moved toward them. His voice broke. Abigail, Alice. The twins held out their hands. Come with us. No, Emma shouted. They're not real. But her father took their hands anyway. The moment he touched them, the room went dark. Dash dash dash. When the light returned, Mr. Henderson was gone. So were the twins. Only wet footprints remained on the floor. Emma fell to her knees, shaking. The wind blew through the open door. The trees outside whispered again. She was alone. Dash dash dash. That night, Emma didn't sleep. She sat by the fireplace, staring at the flames. Her father was gone. Her sisters, whatever they had become, had taken him. She thought about leaving, about running far away from Belle Hollow. But something deep inside told her it wouldn't matter. The house would call her back. Or worse, she might never truly leave. Outside, in the shadows of the swamp, two small figures watched the house. Their white dresses moved in the wind. They were waiting. Dash dash dash. To be continued in part 7. Dash dash dash. Speech balloon call to action. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with other horror fans. Part 7 of the Henderson twins is coming soon, and it only gets darker from here. The Henderson twins, Part 7, The Basement Door. The night after Clara found the twin lockets in her mother's jewelry box, she couldn't sleep. Her thoughts were racing. What was her mother hiding? Why had no one ever mentioned the twins? Rain poured outside. Thunder echoed through the house. The old chandelier in the hallway swayed slightly with each rumble of thunder. Clara walked quietly down the hall, her bare feet cold on the wooden floor. She held a candle, its flame shaking like her heart. She stopped at the old door at the end of the hallway, the one they were told never to open. It was the basement door. Her mother always said, "It's just full of junk. Nothing down there for you." But tonight, Clara felt something calling her. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something stronger. She reached for the rusty handle. Click. It was unlocked. Slowly, carefully, she pulled it open. The door creaked like an old man groaning in pain. Cold air rushed up from the stairs. It smelled like wet earth and forgotten memories. She stepped onto the top stair. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Clara froze and turned. It was Joseph. He looked tired, pale. "I couldn't sleep either," he whispered. "I saw you coming here." Clara nodded. "We have to see what's down there." The twins held hands and walked down the stairs together, one step at a time. Each step groaned beneath their feet. The candle barely lit the way. Cobwebs brushed against their faces. Clara wanted to turn back, but something told her to keep going. At the bottom, they found a heavy wooden door. It looked older than the house itself. Strange markings were carved into it, circles, triangles, and what looked like two small children holding hands. Clara placed her hand on the door. It opened by itself. Inside was a large stone room. The walls were made of black bricks. Old furniture was covered with white sheets. But what caught their eyes was the painting on the far wall. It was a giant mural. Two little girls stood in a field. They looked exactly like Clara and Joseph. But their eyes were hollow, empty, and behind them stood a man in a black coat, his face hidden in shadow. Joseph stepped closer. "This is us," he whispered. "But why are we in this picture?" Clara's hand trembled as she held the candle closer. There were words written below the painting. "Blood binds the living to the forgotten. Twins must return to balance the curse." Before Clara could speak, something moved behind them. They turned. An old rocking chair began to move. Back and forth, back and forth. A soft whisper filled the room. "Not yet, not yet." Clara grabbed Joseph's hand. "We have to go. Now." They turned to run back up the stairs, but the door slammed shut above them. They were trapped. Clara banged on the door. "Let us out." No answer. The candle flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed them whole. Then, a soft blue light filled the room. They turned slowly. In the center of the basement, two little girls stood. Pale, glowing, their dresses floating like smoke. Their eyes were full of sadness. Clara gasped. "It's them." The twins who had vanished. The ghosts of Annabelle and Beatrice. The spirits said nothing, but reached out their hands. Clara and Joseph couldn't move. Their bodies were frozen, their minds flooded with visions. Visions of long ago. The Henderson family in 1852. Annabelle and Beatrice playing in the garden. Their mother smiling. Then, the fire. Screams. Darkness. And a man dragging the girls into the basement. The same man from the painting. A voice boomed inside their heads. They were sacrificed to protect the family. The vision faded. Clara gasped for breath. Joseph was shaking. Suddenly, the ghost twins vanished. The basement went dark again. Then, click, the door opened by itself. Light from the hallway spilled in. Clara and Joseph didn't wait. They ran up the stairs and slammed the door shut behind them. Their mother was standing there. Her face pale, tears in her eyes. "You went down there," she whispered. Clara stepped forward. "You knew." You knew all along. Their mother nodded slowly. They were your great-great-aunts. The curse, it's been in our blood for generations. Why didn't you tell us? Joseph asked. Because knowing doesn't stop it. It just makes it worse. Clara took a deep breath. We saw them. The twins. They're not evil. They're just trapped. Their mother looked down. That basement, that painting, they were never meant to be found. Thunder shook the house again. A cold wind blew through the hallway. The twins knew this wasn't over. They had started something ancient, something that wanted to be finished. To be continued in Part 8. Shall I continue with Part 8? The Henderson Twins, Part 8. Simple English 1000 words American Horror Story Series. Night had fallen again on Belle Hollow, but this time it was not quiet. The wind howled through the trees like a crying child. The old house creaked as if it were breathing. Inside the mansion, Abigail Henderson stood alone in the drawing room, holding the old photo of her twin great-aunts, Lila and Lucy. Her hands were shaking. Outside, the swamp bubbled unnaturally. Grandfather's journal had revealed a secret Abigail could hardly believe. The twins had never left Belle Hollow. They had died here, murdered by their own father in a desperate ritual to save the family's cursed name. But why were their ghosts still here? Abigail lit a candle and walked up the stairs. Each step creaked under her feet. Her cousins, Emily and Henry, were asleep in the guest rooms, unaware of what she was about to do. She reached the attic. The door opened on its own. Inside, the air was cold and heavy. The candle flickered. Old dolls, trunks, and furniture filled the room. In the corner, the small rocking chair moved slowly back and forth. Abigail stepped forward. Lila, Lucy, silence. Then, behind her, two small voices whispered in unison, "Why did you come back?" She turned around quickly. There they were, two girls in white dresses. Pale, hollow eyes, feet not touching the ground. "Lila, Lucy," Abigail said, her voice trembling. "We waited," the twins said. "We waited for someone to tell the truth." Abigail tried to be brave. "Your father, he tried to sacrifice you. But you fought back. That's why you're still here." The twins blinked slowly, their eyes filled with shadows. "He didn't just try," Lila said. "He succeeded," Lucy added. Abigail stepped back, shocked. "But," the diary said, "he wrote lies," they interrupted. Suddenly, the candle blew out. Darkness. Abigail dropped the candle and backed toward the door, heart racing. Then light flickered again, but this time not from her candle. It was coming from a hidden crack in the attic wall. The twins floated toward it. "Behind this wall is the truth," they said. Abigail touched the wall. It was old wood and crumbling plaster. She found a loose board and pulled. Dust flew up, choking her. She reached inside. Her fingers touched something wrapped in cloth. She pulled it out. It was a small diary. But not her grandfather's. On the cover, in delicate writing, it said, "Lila Henderson 1851. Abigail opened it with shaking hands. The first page read, "Greater than Father says we are cursed. He says the only way to break the curse is to give one of us to the swamp. Lucy is afraid. I told her I would go instead. But Father changed his mind. He says both of us must go. Abigail's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. The twins hovered closer. Their faces softer now. "You can end it," Lila said. "You can set us free," Lucy added. Abigail looked at them. "How?" They both pointed at the diary. "Tell our story." That night, Abigail typed every word into her laptop. She recorded a video, reading their story aloud, and posted it online with the title, "The Forgotten Twins of Belle Hollow." The video went viral in days. News reporters came to Belle Hollow. Historians investigated. Bones were found in the swamp. 2 small skeletons buried in a box, just as the diary described. Finally, Lila and Lucy were given a proper burial in the town cemetery, under a white marble stone. Lila Henderson and Lucy Henderson. Born 1841, died 1851. Forever sisters. Forever free. Abigail stood at their grave the next morning. The sun was rising. Birds sang softly. The wind no longer cried. Behind her, the old Belle Hollow mansion seemed peaceful. Then, just as she turned to leave, she heard one last whisper. "Thank you, Abigail." She smiled, and the ghosts of Belle Hollow were quiet at last. End of Part 8. Do you want Part 9 next? The Henderson Twins, Part 9. Simple English 1000 Words American Horror Story Series. A week after the twins were buried, things at Belle Hollow began to return to normal, at least on the surface. But Abigail couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. Yes, the haunting had stopped. The strange noises, cold spots, and floating figures were gone. Emily and Henry had gone back to the city. Reporters had moved on. Even the townsfolk who once whispered about the curse now greeted Abigail with kindness. But deep in her heart, she felt something unfinished. She sat on the front porch one afternoon, reading the last few pages of Lila's diary. Most of it was innocent, childlike drawings, poems, letters to Lucy. But one entry stopped her cold. Greater than he wasn't the first. Grandfather told father what to do. Said it had to be done every 50 years. He said the land demanded it. Abigail froze. Every 50 years. She quickly did the math. The twins died in 1851. 50 years later, 1901. Then again in 1951. And now, it was 2001 when her grandfather died suddenly. And now, it was 2001 plus 50. It was this year. Abigail's blood ran cold. Was the curse still alive? That night, she returned to the attic, not to speak with spirits, but to dig deeper. She searched every inch, moved every trunk, opened every drawer, and then she found it. A loose floorboard in the far corner. She pried it open. Inside was a box, metal, rusted, locked with a strange symbol carved on top. She recognized it from the diary sketches. A spiral of thorns. She opened it with an old key she had found days before. Inside were dozens of old letters. Stacks of folded paper, yellowed with age. Most were from a man named Elias Henderson, her great-great-great-grandfather. They spoke of rituals, land sacrifices, protection spells, bargains made with something called the Hollow One. Abigail's hands shook as she read one letter aloud. Greater than if we do not give what it asks, it takes what it wants. The twins were not enough. Every half-century, we must feed the land, or Belle Hollow dies. She sat back, stunned. The truth was worse than she ever imagined. The hauntings were not just about revenge. They were warnings. The family had made a deal with something old, something hungry, and the debt was due again. Suddenly, the room felt colder. Not like before, this was deeper. Like the house itself was breathing again. Abigail stood, heart pounding. Was it back? She ran to the kitchen and grabbed her phone. She needed help. Historians, paranormal experts, anyone. She tried to call Henry, but her phone had no signal. She stepped outside. The trees at the edge of the property swayed wildly, though there was no wind. The swamp bubbled again, louder than before. Something was waking up. That night, she dreamed of a black figure crawling from the swamp. Long limbs. No face. Just eyes, glowing red. It whispered her name over and over. Abigail. Abigail. She woke in a cold sweat. That morning, she went to the town library and searched newspaper archives for 1901 and 1951. She found disturbing patterns. In 1901, 5 children went missing from the area. Never found. In 1951, a school bus crashed near Belle Hollow. All 12 kids died. In 2001, her grandfather had a heart attack during a thunderstorm, but his autopsy showed no heart damage. Now it was 2051. Something terrible was about to happen again, unless someone stopped it. But how? Abigail returned to the mansion and locked herself in the study. She laid out the letters, the diaries, the photos, everything. Then she found it. A final letter from Elias, hidden in the back of the metal box. Greater than if you wish to end it forever, return the original blood to the hollow. Only a true Henderson twin can close the circle. Abigail's heart skipped. She wasn't a twin, but maybe, just maybe. She opened her grandfather's medical file again. She had found it earlier in his study, buried in a drawer. There was something she hadn't noticed before. Patient: Walter Henderson. Date of birth: May 17, 1951. Sibling: Wesley Henderson, twin. Abigail gasped. Her grandfather had a twin brother. She had never heard of him. Where was he? Why was he hidden? Suddenly, she remembered something her grandfather once said when she was little. Greater than, there were 2 of us, but only one could stay. At the time, she thought it meant something poetic. Now, she knew it was literal. One of them had been given to the hollow in 1951. But he had returned. Or, he had never left. The swamp didn't just take bodies. It took souls. It corrupted bloodlines. And it wanted her next. Abigail knew what she had to do. She packed a bag, grabbed the letters and diary, and left for the swamp. The final chapter of the Henderson curse had begun. End of part 9. Do you want part 10, final part, next with a strong ending and call to action? The Henderson Twins, part 10, the final reflection. Simple English 1000 words historical horror series 1850s Louisiana. The Henderson home stood silent under the pale morning light. The storm had passed. Everything was still, too still. Inside, Eliza sat on the floor of the old nursery. Her dress was soaked, and her hands trembled. She had seen things no one would believe. The mirror, once cracked and haunted, now reflected only her face. No shadows. No twins. No whispers. Just silence. She stood up slowly and walked through the halls. The paintings on the walls were back in place. The house felt empty. Too empty. The town arrives. By noon, people from Belle Hollow came. Sheriff Allen, Reverend Mays, and a few neighbors. They had heard screams the night before. They found Eliza alone. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, were gone. No sign of them. Just burn marks on the floor where the master bedroom had been. When the sheriff asked Eliza what had happened, she just said one word. Justice. She was taken to the church for care. Reverend Mays prayed over her every night. She didn't speak again for days. The hidden room. A week later, a group of men decided to search the house. The whispers about the Henderson family had grown. Some said they had made a deal with spirits. Others said the twins were never alive to begin with. In the basement, behind a brick wall, they found a hidden room. Inside were small beds, children's clothes, and old toys. Carved into the wall were the names Clara and Emma, and underneath, scratched over and over in shaky handwriting, "We want to be free." The journal. Inside the hidden room, they found a leather-bound journal. It belonged to Mrs. Henderson. The last few pages read, "Greater than, the girls speak to me in dreams. They say we took their place. The twins were never ours. We were chosen to carry their pain. The mirror is the door. The house is their prison. They want to go home. But where is home for the dead?" The journal ended with a single sentence written in red ink. "They are coming tonight. Eliza's truth. Eliza finally spoke to Reverend Mays one evening. Her voice was quiet, like wind through dry leaves. "They weren't bad," she said. "Clara and Emma. They were just trapped." He asked her what happened to her parents. "They traded life for power," she whispered. "And now, they've paid the price." She said the girls were free now. They wouldn't hurt anyone else. The house could rest. Burning the past. The townspeople agreed to destroy the Henderson estate. They believed it was cursed. On the third Sunday of October, they set the mansion on fire. As the flames rose, some say they saw two girls standing in the upstairs window, holding hands. Watching. Smiling. Then they were gone. Nothing was left but ash and the broken gate. The land was left alone. No one dared to build there again. Years later. 20 years passed. Belle Hollow changed. New houses. New people. But the land where the Henderson estate once stood remained empty. Grass grew tall. Trees twisted around the fence. One evening, a young woman named Abigail, a writer, came to town. She had heard the old tale of the Henderson twins. She wanted to write a book about it. Locals warned her not to go near the land, but she didn't listen. Curiosity was stronger than fear. She found the gate, rusted and bent. She stepped inside and walked through the wild grass. At the center, she stopped. She took out her notebook. Then she heard it. Laughter. Soft. Two voices. Behind her. She turned around. No one. Then she looked down. Two small handprints in the dirt. Fresh. Still warm. Final line. The Henderson twins had found peace. Or maybe they had simply moved on. Loudspeaker enjoyed this series. Checkmark like this video if you love haunting stories. Speech balloon leave a comment. What do you think really happened to the twins? Repeat button share this full series with friends who love spooky mysteries. Bell subscribe for more chilling historical horror stories every week.